What makes a language? The distinct form of speech heard from Britain, Germany, and intellectual Switzerland are considered regional dialects of the German language, and yet when someone from Britain is visiting the Swedish Alps, the conversation they hear between locals will likely be incomprehensible to them. Similarly, outside of China, Mandarin and Cantonese are often referred to as Chinese dialects, but they are even more dissimilar than Spanish and Italian. On the other hand, speakers of Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish, which are recognized as the three distinct languages, can usually communicate in their native tongue with little difficulty. And Turkish language soap operas broadcast without dubbing or subtitles are some of the most popular shows in a German-speaking region. So, when is a form of speech considered a dialect versus language, it seems reasonable that the degree of mutual intelligibility would determine whether two ways of speaking are classified as separate languages or as dialects of the same language. But as we've seen, that there are many occasions where it's not the case. Perhaps so surprisingly, the distinction between the language and dialects usually has nothing to do with pronunciation, vocabulary, or any other linguistic features. However, it's not coincidental either. It's a matter of politics. The basis for what's officially deemed a language was shaped by the emergence of European nation-states beginning around the 1500s. In order to establish and maintain centralized governments, clear territorial boundaries, and state-sponsored education systems, many nation-states promote the standardized language. Which form of speech was chosen to be the standardized language was usually based on what people spoke in the capital, and while other forms of speech persisted, they were often treated as inferior. This tradition extends across the globe with European colonization and into modern times. Italy, for example, has at least 15 what might be called regional dialects. One of them, the Florentine dialects, became known as Standard Italian when the country politically unified in 1861. It was selected because legendary authors like Dante and Machiavelli used it in their original works, and it came to represent a measure of Italian national identity, and some found it particularly desirable. Later on, in these attempts to establish a unified fascist state, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini saw language standardization as an important objective. His government promoted standard Italian while prohibiting other forms of speech from public sphere, framing them as backwards and unsophisticated. In every phone job applications to court testimony, standard languages act as gatekeepers around the world. For instance, one 1999 study shows that the landlord responds to apartments increase based on what form of speech their prospective tenants use. When callers spoke African American Vernacular English or AAVE, landlords were more likely to reject their inquiries. When they spoke so-called Standard American English, which is often associated with whiteness, landlords respond more positively. Both of these forms of speech are considered English dialects. In the United States, some people have cast AAVE as an incorrect or simplified version of mainstream U.S. English, but AAVE follows consistent grammatical rule, every bit as sophisticated as other forms of English. Linguists tend to avoid the term dialects altogether. Instead, many opt to call different forms of speech variety. This way, languages are seen as a group of variety. So, the English language is made up of variety including Standard British American English, AAVE, Nigerian English, Malaysian English, and many others. Each have own unique history and characteristic pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammatical protection. The dividing line between variety is murky. Human language, in all its cross-pollinating, ever-evolving glory, naturally reaches the impulse of a sort into the neat bucket. Oftentimes, forms of speech exist in a kind of linguistic continuum where they overlap with others and differences between them are gradual, not clear-cut. And that's the confounding beauty of the dynamic, diverse, and dazzling universe of human communication. So this is the another video. What is the calorie? We hear about calories all the time. How many calories are in this cookie? How many birds by 100 jumping tracks, or long distance running, or visiting? But what is a calorie really? And how many of them do we actually need? Calories are a way of keeping track of the body's energy budget. A healthy balance occurs when we put in about as much energy as we lose. If we consistently put more energy into our bodies than we burn, the excess will gradually be stored as fat in our cells and will gain weight. If we burn off more energy than we replenish, we'll lose weight. So we have to be able to measure the energy we consume and use. And we do so with a unit called the calorie. 1 calorie, the kind of measure in food, also called a large calorie, is defined as the amount of energy it would take to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Everything we consume has a calorie count, a measure of how much energy the item stores in the chemical bond. The average pizza slice has 272 calories. There are about 78 in a piece of bread, and an apple has about 52. That energy is released during digestion and stores in our molecules that can be broken down to provide energy when the body needs it. It's used in the 3 ways. About 10% enable digestion, about 20% fuels physical activity, and the biggest chunk, around 70%, support the basic function of our organs and tissues. That third use corresponds to your basal metabolic rate, a number of calories you would need to survive if you aren't eating or moving around. Add in some physical activity and digestion, and you arrive at the official diet for how many calories the average person requires each day: 2,000 for women and 2,500 for men. Those estimates are based on factors like the average weight, physical activity, and muscle mass. So does that mean everyone should shoot for around 2,000 calories? Not necessarily. If you're doing the energy-causing activity like cycling to from, your body could use up to 90,000 calories per day. Pregnancy requires slightly more calories than usual. And elderly people typically have a slower metabolic rate, energy is burn more gradually, so less is needed. Here's something else you should know before you start count calorie. The calorie count as nutrient levels measures how much energy the food contains, not how much energy you eat actually get out of it. Fiber foods like celery and whole wheat takes more energy to digest, so you'd actually wind up with less energy from a 100 calorie serving of that and 100 calorie serving of potato chips. Not to mention the fact that some foods offer nutrients like protein and vitamins, while others provide a far less nutritional value. Eating too many of loose foods could be overweight and malnourished. And even with the exact same food, different people might be not get the same number of calories. Variation in things like enzyme level, gut bacteria, and even intestine length means that every individual's ability to extract the energy from food is a little different. So a calorie is used for energy measures, but to work out exactly how many them itself requires, we need to factor in things like exercise, food type, and our body's ability to process energy. Good luck finding all of that on a nutrition level. One more. We hear about calories all the time. How many calories are in this cookie? How many is burned by 100 jumping jacks, or long distance running, or visiting? But what is a calorie really? And how many of them do we actually need? Calories are a way of keeping track of a body's energy budget. How healthy balance occurs when I put in about as much energy as we lose. If we consistently put more energy into our bodies than we burn, the excess will gradually be stored as fat in our cells and will gain weight. If we burn off more energy than we replenish, we lose weight. So we have to be able to measure the energy we consume and use. And we do so with a unit called calorie. 1 calorie, the kind of measure in food, also called a large calorie, is defined as the amount of energy it would take to raise the temperature of 1 kilogram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Everything we consume has a calorie count, a measure of how much energy the item stores in its chemical bonds. The average pizza slice has 272 calories. There are about 78 in a piece of bread, and an apple has about 52. That energy is released during digestion and stores in other molecules that can be broken down to provide energy when the body needs it. It's used in three ways. About 10% enable digestion, about 20% fuels physical activity, and the biggest chunk, about 70%, support the basic functions of our organs and tissues. That third use corresponds to your basal metabolic rate, a number of calories you'd be survive if you weren't eating or moving around. Adding some physical activity and digestion, and you arrive at the official guidelines for how many calories the average person requires each day: 2,000 for women and 2,500 for men. Those estimates are based on factors like average weight, physical activity, and muscle mass. So does that mean everyone should shoot for around 2,000 calories? Not necessarily. If you're doing an energy goals activity like cycling the Victoria Fan, your body could be used up to 90,000 calories per day. Pregnancy requires a slight more calories than usual. And elderly people typically have a slower metabolic rate. Energy is burned more gradually, so less is needed. Here's something that you should know before you start counting calories. The calorie count on nutrient levels measures how much energy the food contains, not how much energy you can actually get out of it. Fiber food like celery and whole wheat take more energy to digest, so you'd actually wind up with less energy from a 100 calorie serving of celery and a 100 calorie serving of potatoes. Not to mention the fact that some foods offer nutrients like protein and vitamins, while others provide the far less nutritional value. Eating too many of those foods could leave you overweight and malnourished. And even with the exact same food, different people might not get the same number of calories. Variation in the things like enzymes level, gut bacteria, and even intestine length means that every individual's ability to extract the energy from food is a little different. So a calorie is a usable energy measurement, but to work out exactly how many of them each of us require, we need to factor in things like exercise, food type, and our body ability to process energy. Good luck finding all of that on a nutrition level.